Joining us to talk about this and other issues, Congressman Keith Ellison. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, earlier this morning on CBS on Face the Nation, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy suggested that we may need boots on the ground to fight ISIS. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's way premature to say anything like that. In my view, ISIS is literally trying to bait and lure the United States to put boots on the ground. This is a fight that should be led by Iraqi and Syrian people who have the most interest in battling this, and if the U.S. supports with some training and equipment and perhaps air support, that makes sense to me. But to send Americans in there, that is exactly why they're sending these videos, because they believe that if they can get us to get boots on the ground, they can signal to their recruits that there's an occupier to be fought, and that will draw them greater resources. We should choke off their financial resources. We should choke off their oil supports. We should choke off the borders to make sure their recruits can't get to them, like through Turkey and other places. There are a lot of non-military things that could do a lot of damage to ISIS, and we should do those things and exploit those avenues most certainly. But remember, they're doing these videos for a reason. It's propaganda. They're trying to draw us into this thing because it is to their advantage to do so. We need to be wise about that.
All right. As one of the very few Muslim members of Congress, your view on this issue has been widely sought out by the national press as well. Let's talk about the propaganda effort here, because this propaganda effort that ISIS or ISIL is promoting is working. It's even attracting some fighters from here in Minnesota. What are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are that we need to be clear that ISIL offers nothing other than death or long-term incarceration. There is nothing noble or good that they are doing, and anybody who thinks that perhaps they want to support an effort like this should be discouraged to do so by all means. We also should make sure that we do have a good, solid working relationship between law enforcement and local Muslim communities. I'm very proud of the work that Andy Lugar is doing, working with community.
The U.S. Attorney.
U.S. Attorney, building a
who has a grand jury convened right now looking into the possible, possibly people being recruited here.
Well, because he knows that the ISIL recruiters are trying to victimize the community. And so if he can ally with the community, he can get information to hold these people accountable under the law. But they offer nothing but death and long-term incarceration. They're not standing for anything noble. You're not helping your religion by standing with these people. So I urge everyone to turn backs on them and report what you know. These are evil people. They're not Islamic. They're not a state. They're just a band of criminals who are trying to impose a lot of harm on the whole world.
All right, switching gears here, let's talk about the Ebola threat. You represent many Liberians. We have one of the largest Liberian communities outside of Liberia in Minnesota.
True.
Members of the Liberian community say they are beginning to feel somewhat ostracized and stigmatized by this and this misinformation that exists about Ebola. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts are that Congress and the United States government needs to go to West Africa to arrest Ebola right where it is. It's not so much that Ebola is fatal if you're exposed to it. We have successfully treated people who've been exposed to Ebola, but you have a lot of weak health systems in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and so we need to help strengthen those health systems to get the treatment the people really, really need. Now, in terms of here in the United States, it's an information thing. It's a strong public health need, so we're working with the CDC and other agencies and the Liberian community to try to get information out, and good information out. It's an airborne disease. You can't get it by touching someone. You cannot get it by touching someone. It's not an airborne disease. Excuse me, I think I misspoke there. It's not airborne, and it's important to remember the facts are what we need to rely on.
I do want to ask you about Minneapolis Community Action, a nonprofit that's under investigation for allegedly misappropriating at least $800,000 in taxpayer money. You were on the board of this group and were forced to resign a few weeks ago. Did you have any idea that funds were allegedly being misappropriated?
No. In fact, 7 years ago, I was invited to designate someone to be on the board. I wasn't on the board. I didn't expect to be an active board member at all. I was asked to designate someone, and I had no involvement after that. Now, I'm heartsick as anyone because of these allegations. Community Action...
But you were listed still as a board member as recently as 2011.
And I'm upset about that because I had no information about that, certainly was not asked or given my permission or anything like that. And so I want to get to bottom of this just as much as anyone else, and this is why I fully support an investigation and expect that all people who are culpable will be held accountable.
All right, Congressman Keith Ellison, always a pleasure. Thank you.